All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. We're here tonight for some DFS Golf, DraftKings, and FanDuel PGA picks and lineup advice for the AT&T Byron Nelson 2021. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we'll be here for about 10:30 until about 10:30 for 30 minutes, answering all of your questions about tomorrow's Byron Nelson PGA contest on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Here's what we're going to do. We'll talk about some of the biggest betting market movements, what that means for our PGA DFS lineups. We'll discuss some lineup strategies, some top plays, and some projected ownership. And along the way, if you have questions, go ahead and hop in the chat here to the right of the video. Ask them. You guys will drive the discussion as well. So any questions you have, go ahead and ask them. So it is a unique week. Let's jump right into it. We are 1 week away from a major. PGA Championship is next week, so we always see some oddities the week before, and no bigger oddity than seeing Dustin Johnson withdraw on Monday afternoon. And whenever this happens, it always causes a cascading effect, both in the betting markets and in DFS ownership. When you have someone as highly skilled and highly projected as Dustin Johnson, then when he withdraws, naturally the betting market has to catch up and adjust. DFS salaries obviously stay the same, which means we see some condensed ownership towards the top for the studs who did not withdraw. And we'll talk about that here in a second. And what we notice let me get this tweeted out actually while we're just getting started here. Okay, we are tweeted out. And if you're not following us on Twitter, be sure you do at Occupy Fantasy. What you see on screen here is our daily plug, OccupyFantasy.com. Our PGA DFS expert, Nir Amata, longtime DFS winner, has won a $100,000 prize already this year in PGA DFS. He comes in every week, gives his top plays from his personal model, talks about some picks from our Occupy model that ranks every golfer on FanDuel and DraftKings. Most importantly, discusses high-level strategy. Usually that means some sort of lineup construction, a look back at previous years for this event. But this week was pretty special because he talked about losing streaks. He talked about how to tell if you're truly in a slump or your process has gone awry. Go check it out, the lineup strategy section of the Daily Plug. It's super informative this week. And then probably the most important aspect of the plug, at least in my opinion, and the best part for you all, if you're not a member, it's above the paywall. So anyone who, Occupy member or not, can come in and look at this. It is the betting market analysis on Wednesday. We call it the Wednesday update. Basically what he does, he tracks the odds to win at Pinnacle Sports, one of the sharpest sports books in the world, and looks at when the lines first open until Wednesday afternoon before the tournament starts, who saw the biggest move in their odds to win. Now, this can be very difficult on a week where a top player withdraws halfway through the week. Fortunately for us, Niramata is on top of this. He knows what he's doing, and he retracked the odds after DJ withdrew Monday. A little bit shorter time frame to track moves, but again, it is something that he tracked, and we can check that out here in a second. I see Ken's in the chat. What's up, Ken? Glad to have you on board as always. And if you guys have questions, again, go ahead and ask it. If not, I'm going to continue to discuss this. So let's scroll down, and let's look at, in the Daily Plug, the Wednesday update. And now you might be asking, why is this so important? If you've tuned in to our PGA DFS streams before, if you've read the Daily Plug, you'll know that these moves are so important because DFS salaries stay stagnant, and as a result, they can't react to news or sharp bets throughout the week. And these pinnacle line moves, these pinnacle steam moves every Wednesday have been absolutely crushing over the past year and a half, and even before that. Niramata has been writing the plug for us for about a year and a half now, and even before that, these line moves were crushing and very predictive. Brandon B in the chat, what's up, man? So our Occupy model uses our partnered sports book, Play Sugar House in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, whereas we don't have a direct access to this, so we can't use it in our model, but Niramata uses Pinnacle Sports, and it says right here on screen, Pinnacle Sports, in the Wednesday update. And so you may be asking, how predictive are these? What do I do personally when I'm playing? Let's go back. Let's take a look at last week. Last week, if you're not in our Discord channel, you probably didn't see this, but I had quite the sweat over on DraftKings. I've been 150 maxing the flop shot. That's the $15 GPP every single week. This is my third top 10 of the year. I haven't broken through and gotten the first place, but I was bouncing around first through fifth all Sunday afternoon, 200K up top. So it was quite the sweat. Unfortunately, could not get there, but let's walk through the lineup really quickly. And if you see here, 6 guys in my lineups. 5 of these 6, again, this is just a subset of my 150 lineups. But note that my player exposures are heavily reliant on those line moves. Very sharp bettors betting lots of money every single week are putting the information out there that we can easily use. And we know that Pinnacle line moves, we've tracked it before the daily plug started until now. Pinnacle line moves are predictive of fantasy scoring. It's as simple as that. So if you look at this lineup from last week, where I did finish 6th for a cool $10,000, fortunately couldn't get higher. But Xander, he was a line move. Rory, he was a line move. Charles Schwartzel, he was a line move. Aaron Wise, he was a line move. Keith Mitchell, who choked on Sunday, also a line move. 5 out of the 6 golfers in my winning lineups were from the Pinnacle Steam Moves list last week that we were on here Wednesday night last week discussing. The sole golfer from this lineup that was not in the Pinnacle line moves was Grillo, who ranked pretty well in the model and was mentioned in the daily plug as one of the golfers that Niramata likes. So, I mean, literally all daily plug information in this top 6 lineup on DraftKings. And again, all of my big lineups have been this way as well. So hopefully, if you're not convinced yet of the power of the Pinnacle Steam Moves on Wednesday updates, maybe now you are. So let's go back and let's look at this week. Now, a bunch of moves because obviously a lot of things changed after DJ left the market on Monday. And the first thing you might notice is that a bunch of these guys are either or really cheap or like 1% owned. And again, it's really tough to determine how good these moves are because, just with the leader, I don't know if he was the leader at the time, but a top 3 odds to win the event drops out. Everyone else's odds increases, even these bottom of the barrel guys. So we're going to see some moves, right? I think the best way to look at this is this section down here, which is new this week, but it's very rare. Niramata looks at who he thinks were the actual moves. Now, this is kind of subjective, but just looking, these are the guys he thinks had serious moves independent of DJ's withdrawal. These guys would have been bet either way in his eyes based on him tracking the Pinnacle line moves. And so let's look at him. We have Aaron Wise, who was a steam move last week, finished top 10. Charles Schwartzel, who was a steam move last week, finished top 20, I think it was. Keith Mitchell was leading after day 3, line move last week, and finished top 3. Not bad. Jordan Spieth, who obviously we know how hot he was this year going into the Masters, and hasn't played since, but he does get a line move here and an especially high bump with DJ out of the picture. Ricky Fowler wouldn't be a daily plug Pinnacle Steam move section if it wasn't a Ricky Fowler move, who has literally gotten a move 90% of the weeks we've done this. Someone out there has got to be bankrupt at this point. Tom Hose, 25% move. Sam Burns, 24% move. Doug Gim, who is in the model or in the daily plug as a top play, probably going to be pretty highly owned given his recent play and his price. And then Daniel Berger, 17%. So if I was using line moves this week, this would be the list I would probably go from, especially if you're making, 1 to 5 lineups. This would be the core or the guys that I'd be looking towards. And then up here, we scroll back up. I would only use this list for these super low owned guys if you're 150 maxing. You're trying out the lineup builder. You're playing the 5 cent, the 25 cent, or God forbid you're like me and you're playing the 150 $15 and you're playing 10% Roger Sloan, right? So I would be wary of some of these guys just based on the moves. This list down here, the subjective list from Niramata, is probably the best bet this week. And the winner may or may not come from this list, but I guarantee we get a few top 10s out of this list. So If you have any questions, feel free to hop in the chat. Right now, we're discussing the betting market analysis and moves this week, what it means for our DFS lineups if you're just tuning in, how these moves helped me last week. I get top 6 in the big DraftKings GPP. So I guess the next thing we should talk about is probably projected ownership. So let's go over to the Occupy model. And let's give it a little refresh here. As you can see, before the stream, I was actually searching for Aaron Wise, where he ranks and what his ownership was looking like. So let's sort by DraftKings projected ownership. And we have a few guys, 18% projected or higher. Scotty Scheffler, Bryson, Zalatoris, Jordan Spieth, Doug Gim. These guys are all going to be very popular, and for good reason. Scotty Scheffler, he ranks high in our model. Near model wrote him up in the plug. A lot of industry touts and people are on him. Handicappers are on him. Scheffler, if you're paying up for a guy, you're paying up for ownership. Scheffler looks like one of the safest options, which has been a jinx as of late. But if we're looking for these types of plays, you want some guy, whether it's low risk contests, whether it's small field contests, even whether it's large field GPPs, you want some of these high owned guys to anchor your lineups. And Scheffler looks like the best bet of the bunch. Bryson, after thinking he missed the cut last week, flying all the way back to Dallas, and then realizing he did make the cut and had to fly back and end up top 10ing that tournament last week. He's in a good spot this week as well, especially with DJ out of the picture. Zalatoris, who did miss the cut surprisingly last week, only his second time on tour missing a cut. He's expected to bounce back this week. Spieth, obviously, a little bit of a rust potentially after not playing for a month or so. And then Doug Gim, who's a value in most projection systems, most betting market analysis find him as a value. So, if you're looking for 5 guys to anchor your lineups around, the high-owned pieces, you're playing low-risk contests, this is definitely a group of 5 that you should draw from. So, if you have these 5 guys that are high-owned, that project well, that we're all behind, the Occupy model likes them, Near model likes them, the betting markets like them, whatever it may be, we're on board with these 5 guys. So these are we're trying to give you a nice little player pool here on stream. So 5 high-owned players that we like to anchor your lineups, and then those betting market moves to kind of fill in those mid-range guys, and a couple low-owned guys if you're looking for it. A pretty solid start, and that's only 15 players or 15 golfers we've talked about so far. And here comes Ken with his favorite question. He asks it every week, and we have to answer it. It is 10:13. We're here till 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So Ken's question is, a winner, favorite play, fade, and a guy you're playing that we shouldn't. Always fun to answer this question. I think the guy I picked to win last week was Neiman. He just snuck across the cut and really just kind of treaded water. Didn't really do anything all week. So couldn't pick the winner last week. So let's see this week. Who am I going to pick? Scheffler's too chalky. My pick to win this week. Let's go back to the line moves. Let's go back to the daily plug. Wise, Schwartzel, Mitchell, Spieth, Knox, Fowler. Let's go back up a little bit more. See the full line moves. It's a tricky week. It's a very, very tricky week. I'll go with, I'm going to go with the plug cover guy, right? You got to. Matthew Fitzpatrick. I'll go with him as the winner. He's my prediction to win the tournament. We even put it in the plug. You can bet him 20, 22 to 1 to win the tournament. So Matthew Fitzpatrick, my pick to win. My favorite play, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I literally can't believe I'm saying this. Brandt Snedeker, who, if you've been around for the last year and a half or so, the joke in the daily plug. Nirmata is obsessed with Snedeker. We just lit our bankrolls on fire playing him for the better part of the last year. He's been playing well recently. We got to give the guy credit. And if there's a course where he's going to compete, it's a course where there could be some wind and it's a birdie fest. And he got some moves in the betting markets. I know a lot of cappers out there that I respect are on him as well. So I guess Snedeker is my favorite play to get leverage on in high risk contests. A fade. Let's go back to the projected ownership here. And I guess my fade, it's tough for me. I don't know if he's really considered a fade, but it's Keith Mitchell at 12%, right? If he doesn't top 3 last week, right, he's not getting up to 12% ownership this week. So I think it's a little bit of a recency bias. And we still don't know if his putter's fully fixed yet because it felt like he was using that broken putter last week on Sunday. So I guess I'm fading Keith Mitchell to an extent And then the play that I'm playing that you probably shouldn't, there are two guys that come to mind. One is, let's go back to the plug, MJ Daffue, who I may be saying his name wrong, but let's, near amount of pointing him out in the plug. Monday qualifier, 1% owned. He's a guy that I'm playing. Another guy I like, he's from the European Tour and has really good stats over on the European Tour. And he actually ranks pretty well in the model, surprisingly. You know, not a ton of PGA stats to go by for this guy, but it is Antoine Rosner, who I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong too because he's French. But ranks pretty highly in the model. Not available on FanDuel, surprisingly. But 7,600 on DK, 2% projected ownership, and actually has a top 20, top 25 OF index. So this is the guys that I'm playing that you probably shouldn't. But if you're playing large field, go and throw them in your player pool. E Paradise, what's up, man? Question: is going balanced better than stars and scrubs for the big GPP? Yeah, it definitely depends. We look here. If we a lot of times we can tell by ownership what the field is thinking. If I can get my damn mouse back. There we are. So we sort by DraftKings ownership. Obviously, we get some ownership with Spieth and Bryson and Rahm and Berger at the top. But some of these other guys, 97, 94, 75. I personally like stars and scrubs this week because there are a bunch of guys at the bottom of the price range that have gotten some line moves or from one reason or another are like 1% owned, but there are some reasons to play them. And you could play it, you could rotate a bunch of those guys. I generally like balanced builds better in smaller field, 100 to 600 players. Large field, I'm okay with stars and scrubs because you have to take some risk, and I'm okay with taking risk in a contest that size. So I guess my answer is it depends on how big your contest is. Larger field, I prefer stars and scrubs. Smaller field, I definitely prefer balanced. Timothy says, what are your thoughts on Tomas Peters this week? Good question. Another European guy coming over, and the model does like him a lot. Let's see here. Yeah, 81.6 OF index. That's basically top 10. Also has a top 10 ownership, 16%. So if we're trusting the model here, from a math perspective, it looks pretty good. We know there's always some correlations with Texas and the wind and European players and them playing in the wind. Peters kind of fits that bill here. So, yeah, I like him. I think if you're using him, he would be one of the high-owned guys, high-owned pieces in your lineup. So, yeah, Brandon says hopefully FanDuel puts Roser on last minute. I wouldn't hold my breath. There's a European golfer, Rasmus Hagjard, who I definitely butchered that name, but he's played like 6-7 events over the last 6 months, and he still hasn't been added to FanDuel. You can add them, you can try. I doubt it, but yeah, if you're playing DraftKings, it looks like a play. I don't know if he'll be available on FanDuel, especially with 8 hours until lock. So, all right, 10:18, 12 minutes left in the show. Any final questions, go ahead and get them in the chat. If you like what you see here, make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube. That way you get access to all of our videos as soon as they're released or they're uploaded or whenever we go live. Give us a thumbs up. It takes a lot of effort to put these videos, a lot of time to put these videos on. So giving us a thumbs up lets us know that you appreciate what we're doing and that we should continue to make these types of videos. If we get 50 thumbs ups on a UFC, we know we should continue doing it. If we get 3 thumbs up on a golf show, maybe we stop doing golf. It's really driven by demand. So if you like the golf work, give us a thumbs up. We always appreciate that. So, all right, we've talked about the betting market moves. We talked about projected ownership. We talked about some of my favorite plays. I guess we should talk about this. If you guys have specific questions about PGA, let me know. But I think we should talk about this. It's very important. And most people will gloss over this section, but I think if you play DFS on a daily or weekly basis, it's important to consider this. And let's scroll down to the daily plug, to the bottom. The lineup strategy section. Niramata has pointed out that, his picks in the plug over the last 2-3 weeks haven't met expectations, and he's as hard on himself as anyone is. So, if you're here just for the picks, right? What can I tell you? We're here to teach you how to play DFS. You could come in and check in, and it could be a 2-3 week stretch where we're cold on picks. That happens over the course of a year, 5 years or whatever it may be. Just so happens that we're in one of those stretches, and no doubt about it, Nirmata's going to bounce out of it. But he talks about his process, and I encourage you to read this. I do see we have some questions in the chat, so I'll get back to those. But he's talking about when he's losing. And listen, of course, I've been there with my high risk approach. If you're watching this, unless you're a liar, you've been through a rough patch in DFS, a losing streak. Read the lineup strategy section of the plug this week to talk about what kind of things you should be thinking about and looking at when you are in one of those downturns that seems inevitable. It feels like you're never going to get out of it. And you feel like you're grasping at straw sometimes, trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. Read this section this week. I got a little bit of it up here on screen. You can pause it and read it if you're not a member. But it really talks about things to investigate during your losing streaks to see if you're on the right track still, or if you're emotionally letting things get the best of you. So be sure to check that out. Question, can we talk about the guys that are 10K plus on DraftKings? For sure. Let's go back to the model. That'll be our best bet here. So if we're on DraftKings and we sort, so we have 5 golfers: Bryson, Rahm, Spieth, Hideki, and Berger. And, oops, almost spilled water all over the computer. Would have been bad news. So if we're looking here, we're talking about guys who got line moves in some way. Bryson, Spieth, Berger. My mouse is not cooperating. All right, here we go. So Bryson got a line move. Spieth got a line move. Berger got a line move. All these guys rank in the top 20 of the model by OF Index. Sort by OF Index. Rahm number 1 overall. Hideki number 3. Bryson and Berger. Berger's like 10th. Bryson 15th. Okay. So, I mean, they all rate pretty well. Their prices are pretty appropriate. I mean, we're looking at pure ceiling here, right, for high-risk contests. If we're talking about, pure value, low-risk contests where we see pros jam in values, we're not really discussing that here. We're talking about ceiling and potential to win and potential to help you win GPPs. So, I mean, the thing to think about here is just how would you utilize them in your lineups? Bryson and Spieth and Rahm, to me, qualify as guys who are going to be popular, going to be highly owned, and if you need a high-owned anchor, use those guys. Low risk, small field contests, large field anchors, whatever it may be. Berger, I don't know if he'll get up to 16%, but I do feel like he's going to be lower owned than Bryson, Rahm, and Spieth. So if you're looking for a little ownership savings, I like Berger a lot this week. I think he might fly a little under the radar. But really the one that, I mean, no one's talking about him since he won the Masters. Hideki hasn't played since, and it shows. Really no betting market movement for Hideki. Just 7% projected ownership. And this is a guy that just won a major. So, maybe Hideki's been partying and have a little major hangover here. Maybe you can. But for me, I have to have some exposure to Hideki in large field contests just because we get a guy who's top 3 in a model, who had just won a major, and is the lowest owned of that group. We've talked about it a few times on this show before. There are PGA DFS pros out there whose games we respect that have won a shit ton of money in PGA DFS that literally their sole strategy is to just go way overweight on low-owned studs. And Hideki would qualify this week. I know there's a couple PGA players who see Hideki, see a player. I mean, if you just sort by salary and you look for these ownership gaps, 7%, right? What is driving that? The fact that he hasn't played, he's not a true value according to the betting markets, whatever it may be. He has a long-term ceiling. I mean, he's a short-term ceiling. Dude just won the Masters. So pros, I think, will jump on this spot in high-risk contests. And our model kind of picks up on it as well, ranking him number 3 overall. So I hope that answers the question. Siwoo Kim or Luke List questions are really comment about these guys. Luke List I like a lot. The model has picked up on it. He's actually, I mean, this is crazy to see. Luke List, like 7th overall in the model. Not too highly owned. Luke List has been playing really well lately. I don't know if he finished in the top 10, but was hanging around the top 10 on Sunday this past week. And he's a guy you can get leverage on. You're playing multiple lineups, get 25% of lists into your lineups. You have 2-3 times leverage over the field. I mean, that's a perfect amount. So I like Luke List this week. Siwoo Kim, I know, was getting some respect from some handicappers that I follow. And he's kind of in the same boat, not truly high owned, 14%, right on that border of guys we look to play. But the model likes him as well. Obviously got some line moves to some of the square sports books like Play Sugar House after DJ withdrew. But yeah, I like them both. I wouldn't say going overweight on them. I like List a little more than Kim because of the salary savings and the ownership savings. But the model likes both of them. I know there are definitely reasons to play both of them as well. So I hope that helps. All right, 10:25, 5 minutes. Let's get any rapid fire questions in here. Just a little preview of what's coming up next. We'll be live UFC 262 on Saturday here on YouTube. If you don't play UFC DFS, I know there's really basically no overlap between that and PGA DFS, but big pay-per-view event, big prizes on FanDuel and DraftKings. We'll be here live breaking down the slate Saturday afternoon. Next week is the PGA Championship. We'll have the daily plug out early on Tuesday. We'll have the line moves. Fingers crossed, we'll get Niramata on the show Wednesday night to break down, answer questions. Haven't talked to Jeff Sherman of the Superbook. We've been doing the podcast with him during the majors. Haven't reached out to him yet. We'll see if he gets some time to bless us with some of his insider knowledge. But be on the lookout for that. The best way to be on the lookout for that is just click subscribe on YouTube. If it's released, you'll be notified. All right. I think we've hit most of the key points here. We talked about the line moves, why they're so important, how they helped me last week, who those guys are this week. Talked about some projected ownership, answered some of your questions. I guess what we really haven't talked about, I'll talk about some leverage guys that I like in that 5 to 15% range. If we're on DraftKings, sorting by projected ownership, that means guys ranging from, this range is Russell Knox range up until, we'll keep it below 15%, Ryan Palmer. Some guys just peek behind the curtain. I may or may not give some reasons here, but guys that I'm going overweight on that are kind of part of my core strategy this week in high risk contests. Brooks Koepka, I don't know if his knee's healthy. I really don't. But there's some murmurs out there that he might be playing better than he did in his return at the Masters. Obviously had some time off. 11% owned, kind of that low owned long term stud ceiling angle. Aaron Wise, I'm going to play him again. Get the line move, only 11% owned. Sam Burns, same boat. A little bit of a line move, 11% owned. Talked about lighting money on fire with Brandt Snedeker. We're going to play him this week as a core play. Cameron Champ is probably my favorite play in this group. We didn't really discuss it, but this is the first time they're playing this event at this course. And there's not a lot of data on this course. There's been some Corn Ferries, some qualifiers at this course, but no real true data. You can't get any strokes gained data like we can for most other events and most other courses. But we know it's a par 72. It's long. Should be a birdie fest. And Cameron Champ got a line move. You have to hit par fives here. If it's going to be a birdie fest and there are 4 par fives, you got to birdie those par fives. We look for guys with distance. Cameron Champ, one of the longest drivers on tour. Just 9% ownership. Big fan of him. Hasn't hit his true ceiling yet. Leishman, I think Niramata mentioned him as someone he likes. He got a line move. Charles Schwartzel with the line move. And I think that's it, right? Oh, and Kuchar, who Niramata wrote up as well. So those are the guys. I mean, I'm trying to give you a full player pool here. Mid-range guys that I like that I'm going overweight on. Studs we talked about. Low-owned players to make. Just a reminder, if you haven't read it already, you're playing high-risk contests. And I'm talking big field GPPs, right? You're 20 max and 150 max in. You want 2 guys 15% or higher. Give that stud anchor. 2 guys 5% or below. Give your lineup that uniqueness factor. And then 2 guys in that middle, 5 to 15%. If you play smaller contests, which I really do recommend for PGA, in most sports, playing those 100 to 600 player fields, really the sweet spot because there's 150 golfers in an event. And it's really tough to get close to the optimal lineup in large field contests, especially if we're making just a handful of lineups. You're playing single entry, big field tournaments, really tough. I'd prefer to play single entry, small field, and whether that's 100 player leagues on FanDuel or whatever, DraftKings, or just these contests that pop up closer to lock that are much smaller, 500 players, 300 players. In those types of contests, you can probably get away with just 5% guy. You get 3 to 4 in that 5 to 15% range, and then still you want your 1 to 3, 15% or higher for that contest size. Okay, I think that'll do it. We are just about out of time. It's not 5:30, Christ. It's 10:30 p.m. Eastern on the East Coast. 5:30. Not even 5:30. It's like 7:30 on the West Coast. But okay. Again, we'll be back next week with the PGA Championship and hopefully some betting, market analysis, from Superbook. Be on the lookout for that. And of course, we'll try to get Niramato on the show since it is a major. If you like what you saw, make sure you're subscribed. You like this video. If you want to talk to us in Discord, get Niramato's updates throughout the week, talk to other members and Occupy staff, click the join button below the video. That'll get you access to our Occupy Fantasy Discord channel. And if you want access to the Occupy model and daily plug, OccupyFantasy.com, memberships as low as $7 per week. So you can follow me on Twitter at BrianJesterFF. You can follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Appreciate everyone listening, following along. Good luck this week, and we'll talk to you.